Hello, I'm Chuck Phillips, South Alabama Home Inspections, and welcome to another edition of Southern Home Talk. And today I'm going to be changing out a wax ring or a failed wax ring on this one-piece toilet. This is a relatively new toilet purchased back in September of last year, and it's by Kohler, and it's a Santa Rosa model, and it's also chair height, and it runs about $300 at the local hardware store. So what you want to do before you get into the process of pulling this toilet off, you want to remove the lid at the top. And by the way, this is the power piston system, which is pretty good. It actually flushes this low volume water really efficiently, and one of the better models I've found to work with. Another good thing about having a one-piece toilet is you eliminate the donut gasket between the tank and the toilet bowl, which is also another leak point or a potential leak point. So I'm not going to be replacing this back with the wax seal, which is on there now, that has to be scraped off. I'm going to be using this new Fluid Master design, which is more of a rubber collar system, and it says on the back, no wax, no mess, can be repositioned, which is really important because sometimes it's hard to set these. And the good thing they say is that plunging won't cause leaks, so that may have been what caused this wax ring to fail, is by over plunging it, and then it just kind of blew it out. So that's what the box looks like. It also comes with a new set of flange bolts, and you're going to want to use these new ones. You want to throw the old ones away, and when you go to remove that, you're going to need a 7/16 wrench. Now, the best way to really empty this water out is by turning off the valve and flushing it, and also using a wet dry vac to suck out any additional water that may remain, because that can add a lot of weight to the toilet. But if you don't have that, you can use a plastic cup and dump it in an extra bucket right there and then empty it out later. But you do want to have a towel on the floor to set the toilet on, because it's going to be kind of nasty underneath there as well. Now when you go to turn the water off, you're going to have to be very mindful of this, because these angle valves, if they're old, there's a very good chance that these can leak, and leak to the point to where you may have to get a plumber involved to get it stopped. So have a plan B in place to turn off the water at the meter in case that happens to you. This valve here is relatively new, and it's also a half-turn valve, so it only takes just one turn of the valve to shut that off. And so that's what I highly recommend you do if we go to replacing your angle stops, is replace them with that type of valve system. So anyway, this is the first part, and so now comes the fun part of taking the bolts off and lifting this toilet up. So stay tuned. Okay, what we're looking at now is the removed toilet. And so it looks like what the problem was, it's not a blown out wax ring, it's really this flange is set too low into the floor. And so probably what happened is whenever they retiled this floor, this tile now rises above the flange of the toilet. And so there's going to be a change of plan here on how to deal with this issue. You can see that this hasn't been pushed in at all, and so therefore there's no wax to remove on the bottom side of the bowl. And so what I'm going to do, instead of using this foam collar or rubberized foam collar that came with the Fluid Master kit, I'm not going to use it. I'm just going to toss it aside, and I'm just going to use this collar here, which will hopefully raise this up high enough to where it'll make a seal. So I'm just going to put it right over these two bolts. And reset the toilet back on top of this. And hopefully that'll have enough height, and it'll also hopefully compress that wax ring and preventing the leaks from around that. So I didn't show you in the first part of the video. You're going to want to disconnect this from the valve system here, and you can pretty much undo this with your hand. Now you may need a crescent wrench, really a pair of channel locks would probably be best, you know, if it's really tight, to kind of break this loose. But this usually comes on and off pretty quick. And I recommend these flexible riser lines. They're real easy to work with. You have to pay a little bit more for them, but like I say, when it comes to plumbing, you know, it's worth every penny to make this job easy for you, because it's already hard enough as it is. Now this shouldn't leak a whole lot after you remove it from the tank, especially if you got all or most of the water removed out of the tank system. But you do want to put a little towel down on the floor to catch whatever water may come out of that. So, okay, now I'm going to try to reset the bowl. So let's see what happens with that. Okay, welcome back. If you can't be at two places at one time, here's a trick that you can use. Now this is providing that you're on a crawl space like this house is, and so I couldn't be upstairs and flush the toilet and be down here at the same time to see if it leaked. And so what I did is I just took some toilet paper and wrapped it around this pipe up here. So if I came back down here and this toilet paper is wet, well then I know that my wax ring has failed above. So that's why this toilet paper's on here. So I'm going to take it off. And I have no leaks. So that's a marvelous thing in plumbing whenever you don't have a leak, because there's really nothing easy in plumbing. I can tell you that from experience of being a plumber. And it's just, no matter what the job is, it's always something that seems to go wrong with it. But fortunately this time, this has worked out pretty good. So you got to ask yourself this question: if you have a crawl space, when's the last time you've been in it? And so crawl spaces should be inspected periodically. And really you should have a crawl space inspection at least once a year, because you can have all kinds of problems going on under your house that can greatly affect the structure itself, and can wind up costing you, thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars to correct. So if you need a crawl space inspection, we don't charge that much for them. Give us a call. We'd be glad to come out and take a look at your crawl space, and we have the gear to do it with. Now another thing I noticed when I was coming down, this is how I discovered this leak, is I come down here probably a couple of times a month just to look and see what's going on, and I had water on the plastic floor down here. But another thing that it kind of sort of alerted me to that there could have been an issue is I also have a humidity monitor, and I noticed that started creeping up to around 70%. So that's something else I recommend you do if you have a crawl space, is to put a humidity monitor in it and see. That's a good way to tell if you've got moisture intrusion inside your crawl space. But it also should be encapsulated as well, and so that's what that is. There's a dehumidifier trying to keep the humidity down below 60%. So also too, I didn't notice it until I came down to inspect my plumbing, was this fire alarm was also beeping, so that battery needed to be replaced. Now you can't shouldn't really put a smoke alarm in your crawl space unless it's encapsulated and climate controlled like this one is. So anyway, let's go back up above and I'll see if I can't finish out that part up there. Okay, now for the last part of this, you can see where, hopefully at the bottom, where I've caulked all the way around on both sides. And what I used is this Alex Plus. It's an acrylic latex caulk, and it does have some silicone in it. You don't want to use a pure silicone caulk, because usually the floor is a little bit damp and it just don't want to bond to it. It really, surfaces have to be bone dry to use silicone. So this is really a good caulk, and it's a clear. It doesn't appear like it is. It goes on bright white. You would never imagine this drying clear. And so the good thing about this caulk is you can get a little bit sloppy with it, and since it's going to dry clear, you're probably not going to notice it much. And it's water cleanup, so you can take a damp rag and you can wipe up any messy areas with it and just rinse out the cloth when you do. And like I say, this doesn't have to be perfect, but I recommend that you caulk the toilet on the front and sides and leave the back open. Don't caulk the back side of it, because you want an area for water to kind of escape if it needs to. And so also, when you're tightening down these bolts, it's real easy to crack this porcelain. So they don't have to really be that tight. And getting back to the caulk thing here, this toilet had some wobble in it, and that was caused by the floor just not being quite level. And so this toilet has no give, and so when you caulk up, you can actually fill in those voids, and it'll kind of glue the toilet in place and keep that from happening. And it really should be done, because what happens is if you allow that play to stay in the toilet, it could eventually start wearing the wax seal, and you'd be right back to square one again, having to come in here and change this. And it's not an easy job to do, and it's primarily because of the weight of this toilet. It's about 75 pounds. It's really heavy, and you have to really get in an awkward position to set it. And so you may notice that there's a line right there I drew in pencil. That kind of gave me an alignment because it's hard to see. As you can tell, if you're standing up over the bowl trying to set this, you can't see really good where the bolts are. So this kind of gives you an alignment area to see where the bolts are to line it up. So, like I said, we never did use the entire kit of the Flushmaster system, which would included this here, because the primary problem with this toilet was the flange was too recessed for the wax seal to actually seal around it, and so it had to be raised up some. And so fortunately the second part of that seal system was high enough to make that happen. So anyway, this is South Alabama Home Inspections. I hope this has been somewhat informative to you. And if you do have a crawl space, this is the reason why you need to go down there occasionally to check it out, because you could have leaks that could be going on down there for months, and in some cases even years. So thanks for watching.